What's going down, D-Gens? Back again after the end of a shitty preseason. Ended up going 2-4. Not what we wanted, but it is what it is, as silly gambling goes sometimes. I'm hoping it's kind of the reverse of last year, where we had a really, really good preseason at 5-1, and then ended up, doing just kind of 50-50 throughout the regular season. So the two losses that we had, were both down to the wire. Ravens didn't come through with a last 2-minute drill touchdown, and then in the Rams game we had the Saints score a fucking unnecessary, useless touchdown with like 4 minutes left in the game that had them hit the over by themselves. So again, all these games, or most of the games, if you're at least on the right side or on the right path, should pretty much come down to a coin flip. And that's what both of these did. They just both went against us. Eventually, these coin flips start going your way, and you hit a couple of them. And what you're really trying to do is hit a couple of them in a row. And one item regarding that coin flip is obviously closing line value. And that's something that I'm going to go over a little bit towards the end of this video. We've gone over that maybe a time or two in the past, but just to kind of refresh everybody on it. So this video in particular, we are going to go over some picks. We're going to recap the picks we already have in the books for week 1. We're going to look ahead to week 2 and what we should be watching for in week 1. So those two, if you're here just strictly for the plays and the bets, definitely something to look into or wait for if you don't mind. And then a couple other items here we're going to go over. Some things that are just more like off-season or just NFL related, with injuries and depth charts and all that kind of stuff, just like what you're seeing on the screen in front of you right now. Also going to go over some of the bigger plays. If you have not been watching this channel since the beginning of the summer, there are some plays that we talked about that are divisional games, and it's going to be a pretty big play, actually maybe even a handful of them throughout the season, the regular season that is, that we'll be looking ahead to. So we're going to touch on that. Some teams that are undervalued, the players that are undervalued on those teams, choosing a sports book, because I know right now, we're in that last home stretch here. We got like 9 days before the NFL season officially kicks off. And you know what? It's not even 9 days anymore. We are officially down to 6 days now. I'm way the hell off. Until the games start counting, which would be next Thursday with Kansas and Detroit. Also, what kind of gambler do you want to be? What kind of just wagers do you want to make throughout the season? We'll touch on that. And then lastly will be the closing line value that I had just alluded to. So let's get it started. I want to talk about NFL Collusion. If you don't follow me on Twitter, please do. It's at AG_sports21, or X now. It's not even Twitter anymore. But the reason I'm bringing this up is I did tweet something out, and I think it's a valid point, and I've had a couple people maybe message me or reach out to me regarding it, and I think a lot of people bring up valid points, but it does not make sense to me. We just saw an off season, and even going back to the end of last year, where big name players, starting with Lamar Jackson, right, who was possibly hurt, possibly holding out at the end of the last regular season and into the playoffs even. And then you also had Jonathan Taylor, who's still an ongoing saga, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, just these big name running backs, and they've all across the board garnered zero interest from other teams, right, or very close to it. And when I say zero, I mean nothing that is like really gonna move the dial here. The Colts are asking for a first-round pick for Jonathan Taylor right now, and I'm just gonna use him because he's the most recent example. But please don't think this is just about him, and it's not just like, well, that's just this one guy, and that's why I'm bringing this up. This is really a phenomenon across the NFL that makes me think that there is very strongly, or there's a very strong chance that there is collusion going on amongst the teams, because these big name guys, the running backs, quarterbacks, whoever, that are getting zero interest, just 2-3 years ago, teams would have made a play for these guys. They would have overpaid them in free agency. They would have overpaid to get them in trades. They would have done whatever they had to do, especially if you're a team that thinks you can win now. If you're a team like the Bills, like the Chiefs, like the Eagles, these teams that are already really, really good, and maybe you just missed that one really elite running back Something can go your way where you just need one of these guys, but you're not willing to pay for them, and you're not willing to give up a first round pick. And especially in their cases where their first round picks are most likely going to be, very, very end of the first round anyways, if they go where they're expecting to go this year. So the fact that not only did Jonathan Taylor not get a first round pick offered for him, but that none of these guys got any sort of big offers, none of them got anything big with like an under or with a restricted free agent tag like Lamar Jackson. Nobody was willing to go out there on a limb. Even Washington with Ron Rivera, when they didn't know who the hell their quarterback was going to be, they were maybe playing with Sam Howell and they weren't sure who they were going to go with. They had zero interest in Lamar Jackson. Really? It does not make sense to me that out of 32 teams, none of them, not one of them, stepped out of line. And you're telling me in a league where I come on here every single week during the season and tell you about how dumb a coach was for running the ball too much, running into bad time, bad plays, bad clock management, not knowing how to call a timeout, not knowing when to challenge a play, just little shit. And you can hear on ESPN too. I'm not the only one talking about it, but just every single week during the regular season, we come on here and mention the bad decisions that they make, the bad play calling, the bad strategy, whatever it may be, the hard-headedness, the stubbornness. That's just the head coach. I don't think you're going to see a huge change where the GMs and anybody above that is much, much better and more equipped at handling these situations than the head coach. Otherwise, the head coach would be in those GM spots. But you're telling me that all 32 of these front offices, independently, without talking to each other, without making some sort of backdoor agreement, came to the conclusion at the same time in the same offseason, with all these big name players looking for money and looking for a contract and looking for some sort of security, all of them, without missing a beat, came to the same individual conclusion that running backs aren't worth anything, that we're not going to do anything. Not just running backs, Lamar Jackson and these big name players aren't worth anything, and we're not even willing to give up draft capital. We're not willing to give up a first round pick because the thought of some big name guy on an early contract is much better than a Super Bowl run this year, which we just saw with the Rams 2 years ago is not true, because you can build a Super Bowl team through those trades and getting, the value for your picks, not necessarily the player for your picks. So what I'm trying to say here is that I highly doubt that all 32 teams, again, independently of each other, came to this same conclusion when we have not seen that type of advanced thinking. We have people fighting back against analytics every single regular season. You have the guys who come out and are just like meatheads and like, you just need to be big and tough and strong and want it. We still see that shit in the NFL. So for you to sit there and think like, oh no, definitely, we all know this is all, given information, this is all common sense now. I don't see it. You don't see that anywhere else in the NFL. We've been saying now that running on first downs is just not advantageous, right, to your team. Playing to skip third down is the way you should play if you want to play a plus EV game, right? Running is really only for short down and distances and this and that. All those analytics, all the advantages, all the computer documents, all the other stuff, that just goes out the window. Coaches pretend like they've never heard of the damn thing. But on this one topic, they all came to the same conclusion. Bull fucking shit. No way. There is some sort of collusion going on in the NFL. And honestly, I really wouldn't even care. I wouldn't mind, because it's not my money. I'm not paying for them. These guys are still getting paid millions, whether they're happy with it or not. They're still getting paid millions of dollars. They signed the contract. They still got to show up. All that kind of stuff. And that's fine. And so that's why I personally wouldn't care. The reason that I do care is that these are not entirely private businesses. This is not just, Jerry Jones has X amount of billions of dollars and he's paying for everything, and so he can do whatever the hell he wants with his private business. Because the people of Dallas, their tax dollars are going to fund some of that stadium, the parking lot, the vendors around, the diners that are around there, all that other extra stuff that's coming with it. They're the one purchasing the merchandise. They're the ones obviously putting the money up front to even make the team worth a damn. So this is, at least in some sense, a public entity, right? Like obviously there's fans and things like that. But aside from that, just coming down to dollars and cents, there is some public money into it. And I just pulled the Cowboys out of my ass, but I mean any team will work in that same situation, right? Any team has to borrow from the city or is using tax money from the city or whatever to help fund their program. So what do they owe to the fans? They don't owe the fans money. They don't owe the fans Super Bowls every year or anything like that. But they do owe at least trying their best to win, right? At least doing what they can to be the best team, to put the best product out on the field. And if they're not going to do that, if they're going to be too entrenched in what they want to do and their own agendas, we may need to relook at that. But I digress. Let's talk about what really matters, what we're all here for, which is unfiltered, unadulterated gambling talk. So let's get into that. First of all, I want to talk about the Panthers and their injuries here. One of my plays, and it's one that we talked about previously for Week 1, is the Falcons -3 against the Panthers. I knew that the Panthers were battling a lot of injuries and just had kind of bad injury luck, or guys coming off of surgeries and things like that from the offseason. But until I really stopped to look through their injury list, I didn't know it was this bad. So DJ Chark, he's saying he should be ready for Week 1, or he's trying to be ready for Week 1. The guy has not practiced yet. And you're bringing in a rookie quarterback that you're hoping is going to look really, really good. And he has not practiced yet with one of his, should be top receivers. Terrace Marshall also out. He, again, should also be, ready for Week 1. But another guy that you have not had your rookie really get in sync with. You have other guys, your kicker, your guard, your defensive end, your corners. Miles Sanders, who's been battling injury, or growing injury, says he's going to be ready for Week 1. But a lot of these guys, it's great that they're going to be ready. But when you're trying to bring on a new quarterback and a new coach with a new coaching staff, to have all these guys just kind of mixing and matching and trying to fill in the pieces throughout the offseason, and they're only getting, quote-unquote mental reps, I don't like it. It's making me feel very, very good about that Falcons play. So Falcons -3 has been bumped up the list a little bit here as far as priority. If you guys can still find the -3 out there, I would definitely get it. On the fantasy / daily fantasy side, look at Adam Thielen. I'm getting higher and higher on Adam Thielen. I was able to snag him after somebody dropped him before the season even started in one of my fantasy leagues. And the reason that I bring him up is, again, because of the injuries. He's really the only guy that's been there throughout the offseason to kind of get into the rhythm of the new offense, to play with the new quarterback, to kind of get in sync with everybody. And if you watch their preseason games here, Bryce Young has been peppering him. Every single time that they're on the field together, he looks at Thielen's way. Now, I get it. As of right now, he's probably the wide receiver 1, at least from the guys who are actually playing. But he manages to constantly find him. Bryce Young is constantly looking Adam Thielen's way, and he's going to give him every opportunity he can to get the ball. And it reminds me of when Romo played with Witten. It's like a very easy safety blanket pass. Adam Thielen's typically not, running 9 routes or anything like that. Underneath stuff, move the chains, stay on time. Now, when it comes to regular season, defenses are probably going to adjust to that, and they probably are going to defend the shorter stuff. But the fact of the matter is, he's looking Thielen's way first. And any opportunity he gets, he's going to go to Thielen first. So whether you want to play the prop, especially if you're talking about just catches, and I have not seen the lines come out just yet, and they usually won't come out until like the Wednesday before the game. But if you're talking about over catches, I would even go over like 3.5 for Adam Thielen for Week 1, maybe even over 4.5, depending on who's healthy and who's not by the time that we get there. Yardage over, possibly a touchdown score. I would even maybe look at the first touchdown score, or at least first Carolina Panthers touchdown score to be with Adam Thielen. That's just the way that the offseason has kind of, geared the team. So that's one thing to look at. like I said, as far as the positive, going to Adam Thielen, the negative would be the Panthers, I don't think are going to be really ready to go week 1. I think you're going to see a pretty limited offense, and it's going to be a pretty low-scoring game from that offense. I would typically look at the under in that game. The problem is it's already the value's already been taken out. The last time I checked, it was down to like 40.5, so it's a very, very low under as it is. Just like that Cardinals-Washington game, it's under like 38.5 now that Colt McCoy's out of Arizona. These games, yes, I technically like the unders or like it to be a low-scoring game. I'm not touching that though. It's just it's bet down too much. So that's number 1 on the chart here. But secondly, the Colts depth chart. If you haven't had a chance to look at this, as of right now, there's officially 4 receivers on the Colts depth chart. One of them being the rookie Josh Downs. Number 1, I'm kind of interested to hear what everybody else has to say as far as how they take this. Is this the Colts telling us they are going to be a run-heavy team, even though they don't have Jonathan Taylor? Is it the Colts telling us that they're going to be using their tight ends? You know, should we expect a lot of big jumbo sets and tight end centric offenses? Maybe. What it does tell me though, and the way I'm taking this, is that while they may be balanced because they don't have a lot of wide receiver depth and they don't have a true number 1 running back right now, at least not that's going to play, what I am seeing is that this offense is going to be very, very centered around a handful of players. So if you are looking at someone like Michael Pittman or Alec Pierce, again, in fantasy, in daily fantasy, and props, I like their overs for week 1. They are playing the Jaguars. We took the Jaguars minus 3.5 for week 1. I still like that play. I like it even more now that we know for sure Jonathan Taylor's not there. Now that we know that for sure they're going to have Anthony Richardson starting. Now that we know for sure this wide receiver room is very, very small. And yeah, you can have them run deep routes. You can have them run 9 routes all day and go routes. The problem is if you have just 4 receivers, and I expect them to add a 5th, but if you have 3 to 4 real guys that really know your offense, and you have 1 or 2 of them running sprints all day, by the time the 3rd and 4th quarter come, those guys are not going to be running 100%. So give me Michael Pittman, give me Alec Pierce for the over on their catches, on the over on their yardage. Give me the Jaguars to win the game. The line has already moved, though. I believe the Jaguars are down to like -6 at this point, so I'm not taking them against the spread anymore. But the Jaguars to win that game looks even better, in my opinion, right now. And again, if you are looking at fantasy, even if it's like season-long fantasy, Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce seem to be very strong plays, if nothing else, because this is one of those occasions where they are truly going to be focused on. Everything is probably going to be funneled through those 2 guys and maybe Mo Alley Cox. But Anthony Richardson, from the little bit that we've been able to see in preseason, has focused on Pierce and Pittman. More so Pittman, but those 2 guys are going to be his best options. They should be out there all the damn time. And with a kind of a denigrated running room, with the best option being Zach Moss, who's coming off an injury himself, give me those 2 receivers, and I'm going to take them all day. And I would even pair them up with Anthony Richardson. If anything, the downside on this may be Anthony Richardson's development takes a little bit longer because you're really not giving him a full deck to play with for his rookie year. So that's just another team I wanted to go over. One thing that I did want to mention as we're talking about these players is undervalued players, and teams for that matter. So undervalued players, the ones that I've just gone over, Adam Thielen, Michael Pittman. 2 guys that, fantasy-wise, not very expensive if you're playing daily, even less expensive if you're in regular season fantasy drafts. I mean, these guys are going in the 8th, 9th round, 10th round. I've got Adam Thielen as 8 is like the 11th round, depending on where you're at. So I like those 2 guys to definitely beat their ADP, be very, very high up the board as far as like volume and things like that, target percentages. But other teams and other players that we should be looking at as far as undervalued, Steelers, Falcons, Chargers, and the Ravens. The Steelers, I don't know how much I've talked about it yet. Kenny Pickett and the offense look really, really good. This is his 2nd year. He's finally, you can tell he's starting to take that step up. But more importantly, Matt Canada, the coordinator, is trusting him more to go downfield. So you see him looking more towards guys like Deontay Johnson, like George Pickens, and they're making the plays for him. He had the number one most catchable pass rate last year as a rookie in the last 6 games, I believe, of the season. He's continuing that now. So I expect big explosive plays out of that receiving room, even if they are a balanced team, and I think Mike Tomlin's going to try to be that because he does love his running game. Those two guys should have enough volume and big plays to make them great for props, fantasy, daily fantasy, like I've been talking about. I love those two guys. More importantly, though, I love the Steelers and having them as a bet on team officially for this year because of that reason. The offense looks more explosive. Matt Canada is more trusting of Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is looking really, really good. He's not scared to go down the field, to make the tight window passes. Deontay Johnson, as great as always. The guy's amazing. He can get open. George Pickens still making circus catches, still just bigger than most other people, still just great on the sidelines, great in the red zone because he's such a big target. The defense is awesome. TJ Watt coming back healthy should be a really, really great step forward for that defense. Now, they are playing in a tough division, obviously with the Bengals, with the Ravens, two teams that should be really good. I'm really high on the Ravens. They're, again, part of the teams that I think are kind of being overlooked, but it's hard to say that they're being undervalued because so many people are on the Ravens this year. The Browns, though, are also, at least on paper, pretty good, and I think they're the X factor to that division because if all 4 teams are great and all 4 teams can kind of split with each other, that's going to be a very interesting division. But the Steelers, to me, have an explosive offense, have a great defense, and really have one of the better coaches in that, really in the NFL, but just all around, there's not really a weakness to pick out with that. I'm sure throughout the regular season, we're going to find little stuff here and there that they're kind of deficient at, but as of right now, I really, really like that Steelers team, and week 1 against the 49ers, they're going to be playing against a 49ers team that is working with Brock Purdy, who's, again, looked really good, but has still not played any other top-tier defenses besides the Cowboys, and then sort of against the Eagles when they lost, but he only played for, I believe, like a quarter, if I remember correctly. So, let's roll with the Steelers here. Look at Deontay Johnson. Look at George Pickens. Look at Jaylen Warren, and I'm sure you've heard this from other places. The guy is explosive. Najee Harris may still be the workhorse in that backfield. He may get the majority of the touches. It may be like a 70-30 split. But I can tell you this, Najee is not going to be as explosive as Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren's going to be the guy they put in with 2-minute drives. Jaylen Warren's going to be the guy that may get 5, 6, 7, 8 touches, but ends up with 9, 10 yards a carry just because that guy has taken to the house speed and explosiveness and shiftiness. And I would not be surprised if at some point, maybe by the middle of the season, it is a true 50-50 split. I think Najee is probably a little bit more sturdy. He's definitely a little bit more willing to take just what's blocked for him and kind of get the 3, 4, 5 yards and not dance around and try to go side to side. But at some point, especially when you're having these big games, divisional games, I would not be surprised to see Mike Tomlin put Jaylen Warren in there to give him a couple chances to make these big plays to kind of kickstart your offense. So those are the undervalued players on the Steelers. Next is the Falcons. The Falcons have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL, playing against the easiest division in the NFL. Bijan Robinson should look great. Offensive line has been upgraded. Coaching staff is still in place from last year. They already did a great job running the ball last year. Now they're just going to have a better running back. Defense, still a little shaky, but I believe it is an undervalued team. I'm seeing a lot of people crap on them. A lot of people think that the Saints are winning that division. And realistically, I believe Arthur Smith is the better coach between him and Dennis Allen. I believe that the Falcons, yes, they may be a one-dimensional team, but I think that they fully buy into that one dimension. They know that they're the tough nose, run the ball. We're going to take 6 minutes to score, and we're going to run the ball down your throat. We're going to beat the shit out of you every time we get on the field, and I think they buy into it. And I don't think the Saints are going to be able to do enough to stop that. The Saints defense is good. Saints defense traditionally has been able to stop the run pretty well. I don't think you can do it for the full 4 quarters against this Falcons team, and especially when you just have guys who can just really make plays on their own, like Bijan Robinson, even like a Tyler Algier, who can make some big plays. Give me the Falcons in that division. As far as underrated players on that, it at this point, it's really going to just be Drake London. The guy's the only real receiving talent on that team. Kyle Pitts is there, but he's not been completely healthy. He hasn't looked great just yet. Throughout his career, he hasn't looked great. He's looked good. But now he's coming in kind of with a gimpy knee. Drake London, the times that they do need to pass, the times that they're trying to throw people off, the times where they're playing from too far behind, he's going to get focused on, right? Offensively and defensively. But the fact is, target-wise, him, Bijan, and Kyle Pitts, when he's healthy, this whole offense is going to be centered around 3 pieces. And for fantasy, for props, for whatever, that's what you want. And that guy should be able to give you pretty consistent production, especially when defenses are getting lulled into this like run. The play action, no, you don't have to, establish the run, but the safeties are going to creep up a little bit more. They are going to be put more in the box. You're going to leave this guy open for one-on-one coverage just because that is their play style. Even before the game starts, the defense is going to know that, and you should see Drake London have some really, really good games because of the lack of attention he's getting. Next is going to be the Chargers. Bring in Kellen Moore as our offensive coordinator. I like the guy. I think he was great with Dallas. If I was Jerry Jones, I would have gotten rid of Mike McCarthy and put Kellen Moore in the coaching spot just to see what he's got, to see if he can do it, because his offensive coordinating skills have been proven. The guy he runs an up-tempo, fast-paced offense, a high-scoring offense. He wants to light up the scoreboard. That's his way to win. That's what he said to Mike McCarthy. That's what he said to Jerry Jones. That's what he told to the Chargers. The guy wants to win by scoring points. He wants to go up there and put up 50-plus points and just, beat the shit out of the other team and not give them a chance to be able to run the ball and do what they want. That they're constantly in that state of having to play from behind, and I love it. I buy into it. I want to see it. And when you have a Justin Herbert, with the Keenan Allen, with the Mike Williams, with a Gerald Everett for that matter, you can do that. You can play that kind of team. Now, defensively, they still have good pieces. They still have a decent defense, so I don't think there's going to be a true deficiency there. It may be just like an average to above average defense, but that offense is going to be their best weapon. Let Justin Herbert do what he's going to do. I think offensively, guys like Mike Williams are being really underrated because he is the big guy. He's the big talent. He's the touchdown guy. He's the red zone guy. He's the go up and get the ball guy. He's the 50-50 cash guy. Keenan Allen is amazing. He's great at running routes. He is more of your possession receiver. He's more of your underneath, your slants, your great route running guy, which is great, and it definitely has its place. And if you are in a PPR league or if you're playing in DraftKings where they give you PPR, not a bad pick at all. But for the truly explosive, high-end ceiling play, give me Mike Williams. One other piece of information that kind of brought me to this conclusion, Quentin Johnson, their first-round pick, was really brought in to be the backup specifically for Mike Williams. Josh Palmer, and we saw it last year, who's a third-string receiver, was really used as the backup for Keenan Allen. When Mike Williams got hurt last year and they put Josh Palmer in there, he didn't look great. He was kind of put in a position where he's not being used to the best of his abilities. Now, when the roles got flipped and Mike Williams was fine and Keenan Allen was hurt, Josh Palmer looked great. That's more his play style. He is more the direct backup, the substitute for Keenan Allen. He's probably going to be their number 3 guy still, and they are probably going to run a lot of 11 personnel, which makes me think even more so that you're going to have Mike Williams be the one guy that stands out. Quentin Johnson has not really had anything overwhelmingly positive said about him during the offseason. They've actually come out and said that he's not looking too great. He's not making the first team. He's not out there with first team reps when they do run 11 personnel. He's like the 4th guy on the depth chart, maybe even fighting for the 5th spot. That's not really positive. And if nothing else, it just leads me to believe that Mike Williams, as of right now, is their guy. They don't have a true backup for him. The guy they drafted to be his backup is not living up to expectations. There's no reason for this guy to come off the field other than injury. And when they get in the red zone and when everything gets tight and when you have to throw up a 50-50 ball and there's really not a lot else there. Mike Williams is going to be the go-to guy. Maybe a tight end, maybe Gerald Everett, maybe it's Parham get scores. They will get scores throughout the year, but Mike Williams is the more versatile piece there. With Kellen Moore, who wants to pass the ball, who wants to go fast-paced, with the Justin Herbert, who's great at doing that, who has a great arm, who can put the ball downfield, when you only have one, maybe two options who can really get downfield and give you a chance with those 50-50 balls, give me Mike Williams all day. Give me the Chargers to be better than what is being expected of them. Even in a tough division, I do see them pushing the Chiefs here, and that should come down to the Chiefs and the Chargers for that division, as far as like winning the actual division. Lastly is the Ravens. Like I said earlier, another team I'm high on. It's hard to say that they're undervalued, again, just because everybody's hyping them up. Everybody's loving what they see on paper. Rashad Bateman has still not practiced yet, which is concerning. But I do love Zay Flowers. I do think he, throughout the course of this year, is eventually going to step up to be the number one receiver for this offense. Odell Beckham is probably going to be the 2, if not the 3, when Rashad Bateman finally gets healthy. J.K. Dobbins seems healthy, going to practice, all that kind of stuff. Gus Edwards is a great backup for that guy. Lamar Jackson, really what what the offense comes down to, right? Is Lamar Jackson, how great is he? Paired with Mark Andrews. Those are the two guys that are going to make this offense go. Those are the two guys that I really don't know how you stop them. With the receiving talent that this team has, you can't leave everybody in the box to guard against the run, to try to stop Lamar Jackson, to try and chip or double team or whatever you want to do on Mark Andrews. He's most likely going to get it lined up with your linebacker, and it's going to be a mismatch. Regardless of who you have back there, the guy's just a mismatch. Even if you bring a safety down on him, if you bring the safety to play on him, now you have Zay Flowers and even an older Odell Beckham that's most likely getting a one-on-one coverage on one half of the field. So kind of pick your poison here. And if you want to run a zone because you're scared of Lamar running and you want to not have your secondary turn your back on the guy, then you're going to definitely be left in a one-on-one position somewhere on the field. And I don't see how you completely shut down that Ravens defense. You're going to have to get to Lamar Jackson. And if you're going to blitz him, again, you're taking the possibility that he runs. So the only way I see stopping the Ravens offense is getting to Lamar, stopping the play before it begins, beating the offensive line, scoring so much on offense that they can't score running the ball, that you force them to throw, and then you can play defense, one-dimensionally. Only way I see to do that. But either way, I see this Ravens team being really good, being really hard to stop, having a great coordinator now who wants to pass the ball more, who's going to use guys very creatively, who's going to be running a lot of 11 personnel, giving Lamar better chances to not just throw the ball, but more lanes to run the ball. Just everything looks improved for this team, and I'm sure I'm not the first one to tell you this, but I really, really like that Ravens offense, and I'm very curious to see what it looks like, especially week 1 against the Texans at the -9.5. It's actually gone up to -10 now. Give me that all day. All of these teams we've either bet on, looked at futures for, players for, whatever it is. The Ravens, again, undervalued piece, sorry, I forgot to mention, again, is Zay Flowers, like I was alluding to. I just think at some point this guy is going to be the undisputed number 1 receiver for that team, and he looks amazing in preseason and camp, college history, all that kind of stuff. So those are the undervalued players. I do want to touch on choosing a sportsbook before we actually get into the plays here. I'll make this short and sweet, guys. Choosing a sportsbook, if you don't already have one, you're going to need to get one very soon. Like I said, depending on when you're listening to this, you have 6 days or less to open the sportsbook to get something down if you want to get something down on that Chiefs-Lions game to kick off the season. Some things that I look for with picking a sportsbook. Number 1, bonuses. How are they used and what's the rollover? It's great if they're going to give you 100% bonus or even 150% bonus, which some places do. What's the rollover, though? The rollover, if you're not familiar with it, and if you guys are familiar with this, if you already have Sportsbook, feel free to skip ahead by like a minute, 2 minutes. But for those of you who don't, the rollover is how many times you have to bet to be able to pull your money out. So if you put in $100 and they match you another $100 and they say the rollover is 5 times, Well, it's the 200 you got, so your 100 plus the 100 that's the bonus, which equals 200. You have to bet that 5 times, meaning you have to bet $1,000 worth of bets before you can take any of that money out. So, what's a good, rate on that, right? 5 times is great, it's 10 times great, it's 20 times great. I personally think 5 to 10 times rollover is about as good as you can expect for a bonus. There's very, very few times, but they are out there, especially if it's like the first time you're using the book, where they'll give you 100% or 50% bonus for a one-time rollover, or maybe a 2 times rollover. Take that all day, every day. But usually it's like 5, 6, 7, 8 times rollover. And a lot of places are now going to 10 times rollover. It's good if you're going to be using it. If you're like me and you're going to be betting every single week and you're going to be betting, 3 to 5 games a week, you'll get through that rollover. Just make sure it's not money that you're expecting to win and then take right back out, because you're not going to be able to. And if you're like me and you're doing a low volume play, which is like 3, 4, 5 plays a week, it may take you a couple weeks. It may take you a month before you're eligible to take that money out. So be aware of that. Check it whenever sportsbook you go to, regardless of which one you're looking at. Look at the rollover rates, and they're going to have it for you in the terms and conditions of the bonus. That's one of my favorites is GT Bets. I put it out there. I am affiliated with them. They have a 6 times rollover. It's one of the best in the industry, which is why I like using them. Because every NFL season, when it's time to redeposit, get ready for the next season, it's there again. It's not like, well, this is a one time just when you sign up. It's every year. So, and it's a 100% match for a 6 times rollover, which is really, really good. That's like almost unheard of, and I've never seen anybody match that, especially with offshore books. My bookie's pretty good as well. There's also 100%. Theirs is 10 times rollover, which is obviously more, but they do offer the incentive of your second deposit, should you need one, is a 50% match, and that one does come down to a 5 times rollover. So you get kind of a double dip there if you need it, if you want it. So those are my 2 favorite, but there's a lot of them out there, guys. There's bookmaker.eu, there's Bet Online, there's Bovada, Bet DSI. That's just a couple off top. There's xbet.com. There's a handful of them that, like I said, just came off the top of my head. Go out there and look for them. A lot of them are offshore books, so you have to, you can be wherever and play with those books. That being said, though, that's one of my main things for choosing a sports book. But secondly, know what you're getting into with the line movements. Something I always touch on, and the reason I primarily go with my bookie and GT is because they're exact opposites. My bookie is a very, very fast-moving company. They move their lines very quickly. Sunday night, Sunday afternoon, when the games are over, they'll put out a line. That line's gonna move before 1 a.m. It's they're taking in money. They're moving the line constantly. GT Bets may take a little bit longer to put out the line. They may not put out a line until very, very late Sunday or even early Monday, but their lines are going to take longer to move. Their line probably isn't moving until maybe that night, if at all, maybe the next day. It takes a little bit longer. So by having 2 books and you're kind of playing them against each other, you can get one as like your identifier to see, okay, this line is moving on this book. I would expect it to move on this book, but it's probably not going to move until tomorrow. And you can kind of get the best lines doing it that way. Like I said, those are the 2 I use, but it's something that you should know of once you get used to a book. You want to have really as many books as you can, as many outlets as you can, but try to keep that in mind. How quickly are they moving? Is it a sharp book? Is anybody else using it? Or is this more of like a square book? Like Bovada, I can tell you it's a very square book. That's the first thing that comes up for everybody. Their lines move very, very quickly, and they typically go against you because it is very square book. So the public betting on it is going to move that line. If you're someone who's constantly fading the public, that may be a good book for you because you can take the other side of that, which is moving against the public, which would help you out. So just a couple of tidbits on that. Closing line value and low volume are 2 more things I want to talk about that kind of associate with sportsbook. So knowing what kind of bettor you are, I'm going to tell you right now, I am a low volume guy. Low volume, high volume is how many plays are you putting out there. Some people are high volume plays, meaning they put out 100 bets a week, and that's not an exaggeration. It's true. It's some people are 80, 75, 100, 125, 150 plays a week. and they are playing small edges, and a lot of times they are kind of playing against themselves in some situations where the lines have moved. And so sometimes they will make one bet on Monday at -2.5, and they'll make a bet on team B on Wednesday at +3.5, and they're kind of hoping for that 3, so they're hedging or they're trying to middle. There's a lot of that out there, but that's again a high volume play, which means either one, you have to have a very, very high bankroll because you're going to be putting a lot of money on the line, or two, you have to play very, very low limits. If you're making 100 bets and they're each $1, well, it's not too bad. But also, that kind of player, you should really be expecting smaller margins, because at 100 plays, even at a 55% win rate, you're really only winning, $3 if each bet is $1, because you have to pay for the VIG, which is typically about 2%. So 55 minus 52 equals 3. So you have a $3 profit on a $100 bet. Just kind of the way that works out. So the less you do, the less you have to win, the bigger your margins should be. And especially if you're playing for bigger limits, that should be what you're going for. Again, unless you're doing this full time, unless you're having a big bankroll to start off with, which most people, especially most people, right now, where shit's getting real tight, depending on where you're at in the country, don't have, $20,000 to be playing around with sports betting, especially if this is something you're doing recreationally. So low volumes, I say really 3 to 5 plays a week. If you can even keep it down to 3, even better. If you can keep it to 1, awesome. Basically what you're doing is, if you play 5 times, you got to go 3 and 2, and 3 and 2, you're still losing, 20% due to the VIG. And so if you go down to 3 plays and you go 2 and 1, well, now you only lost 10%, and then obviously you go to 1 play, you don't lose anything. So that's just another little piece of advice there. Lastly is the closing line value, and like I said, this is something I talked about earlier, especially if you are betting Sunday morning. Whatever the line is right before kickoff, that's everything in the market, all the information known, the depth charts, injuries, home field, raining, whatever. Everything's taken into account by the time we get to kickoff. So that number is as sharp as it's going to be, which means that regardless of what side you're taking, if you're playing the bet right before kickoff, it is essentially a coin flip, right? And you're just saying, well, I think I want to get the right side of this. And you might, and you can definitely win like that. I've done it before. But you are paying 52% at that point to win at a 50% rate. So that's why we don't typically like to do that. If you play Monday or Tuesday and you get a line, let's just say at +3, and by the time kickoff gets there, it's at +1, well, you got basically a 55% win rate, but you're only paying for the 50%. So you're playing on those margins. You're playing, you're getting an extra 4, 5, 6%, maybe even 10% if you get enough line movement and if you get it through the key numbers. And you're trying to get that, because if you come up to me and I say, hey, I'm going to pay you 3 to 2 to call it heads or tails, you should take that bet, because you're getting paid more than what it's really valued at. So that's what we're trying to go for. That's why we even talk about closing line value, and it's something I think is important to know. And then lastly, guys, let's close it out with the books, or with the plays for week 1, and then the plays that we're going to be looking at into week 2 and what we should be watching for week 1. Okay. So, and I'm just going to go over the sides. We do have some over-under plays, but we'll talk about it too. So as far as the sides are concerned, we have Falcons -3. We already talked about that one. I do think that line is going to move if it hasn't already by the time you're watching this. Ravens -9.5, which again, that has already moved. It's currently Ravens -10. The Giants +3. That does kind of go back and forth between 3 and 2.5. I do think you're actually going to get, or you have a chance of getting, a slightly better number on that one as we get to kickoff, only because the Cowboys are going to take their money. The Cowboys defense is getting hyped up again. I could see you getting the Giants at +3.5, but it's going to depend on your sports book, because some books I can see taking a stand on that Giants +3. Jags -3.5. Like I said, we got that earlier in the offseason. That's already moved. It's currently up to Jags -6. So that's one of those lines where we're talking about closing line value. That's 2.5 points. Each point is worth 3% of a win rate, or win chance, right? The probability of a win, I should say. So 2.5 points is 7.5%. So we have a 57.5% chance of winning that particular game, like we saw in the preseason. Doesn't always mean you're going to win. It's exactly what I said. It's a 57% chance of winning. Just means we have a slightly better chance of winning than losing in that game. The more the line changes, the better our odds are of winning the game. Next is the Steelers. Again, I just went over the Steelers, why I really like them, especially in that week 1 matchup against the 49ers, and they're playing at home. So we got Steelers +3, which is amazing, and I don't think the line has moved on that yet, but I do believe it's going to move as we get to kickoff. So those are the first week games as far as sides are concerned. The over-unders, I'm not going to put on the screen, but it's pretty straightforward. It's a lot of divisional games. Browns-Bengals, we got it under 48. That was back in June. That's been knocked down to 47 or 47.5, depending on where you're at right now. So it's still good. I still like it. 47 is a key number when it comes to totals, so I still like that number, but it has gone down from where we initially got it at. We also had the Packers-Bears under 44.5. That is one that I still like, and I still have a lot of data backing that up, but the preseason has at least slightly kind of moved my meter a little bit on that game. The Bears look to be, a slower offense, still very run-heavy offense. Should be getting a lot of Khalil Herbert, a lot of Donta Foreman, a lot of Justin Fields runs. They do have an explosive player with DJ Moore and Justin Fields who can make some big plays with his legs or with his arm. So it's possible that they have a couple of big showings there. The Packers defense traditionally has been weak against the run, and that is really what concerns me the most, because after watching the Bears and seeing a couple of their big explosive plays, not that that's going to happen all the time, but if we get two or three of those and they're scoring, 17, 20, 21 points in a half, it's going to be a much tighter feel than I would have initially imagined. Like I said, I think there's about a 30% chance where that happens, where they actually go out and have these big explosive plays. On the Packers side of the ball, I don't see a whole lot of explosiveness coming out of that, but I do see a lot of sustained drives. Jordan loved using his legs more than I anticipated it in the preseason, and I think we're going to see that in the offseason. The Bears defense looks to be at least good, if not just a little above good. So hopefully they can maybe slow that down just a little bit. It is a divisional game, though. The Packers traditionally come out very, very slow in week 1. The Bears, again, we all anticipate it to be a slower offense. Yes, it is getting a little hyped up in the offseason. Yes, they have had some explosive plays in the preseason, but it's exactly that. It's still the preseason. So I still like the under on that one, but I just wanted to give that caveat to you guys in case you don't find it. And I really don't want to touch it if it's anything under 44.5. And I do believe it's already down to 44 in most spots. And I really, really need that hook for that line in particular. Next is the Vegas-Denver game. Under 44.5. They're playing in Denver, high altitude. Guys are going to get tired. They're going to get winded. Denver has a lot of injuries that they're dealing with. Obviously, the receiving corps is in shambles. Javonte Williams is playing, and he looks quote-unquote healthy, but he does not look 100%. He doesn't look as explosive as he used to. Russell Wilson looks fine, and I think they're going to get the most out of him. I think it's going to be a better season for him this year. Sean Payton looks to be using him the right way. Sean Payton's a great coach, but again, we have a coach here who's traditionally very slow for week 1. Even when he was with the Saints, even when he had really great talent, even with Drew Brees, he was typically just a slow starter. He seems to like to use analytics and kind of play to his defense or play to the opponent a little bit. So I think you're going to still see a slow Denver. Vegas, you already know how I feel about Vegas. I think their coach sucks ass. I think Jimmy Garoppolo's going to take a lot of short underneath stuff. He's going to look decent on paper, but I don't see a lot of explosive plays coming from that Vegas team. Devontae Adams is going to have to do it himself, and he can, but I don't think he's going to have too many opportunities to have a lot of really deep downfield shots. He's going to have to take like a slant route to the house. And like I said, not to say he can't do it. I don't think he can do it more than once in a game, though. I think the odds of that happening are very, very low. So if Vegas does what we think they're going to do and they continue to be conservative and unexplosive, and if Denver just does what what we think they're going to do and just kind of methodically move down the field, rely on their defense, rely on their home field advantage, kick some field goals with Will Lutz, who's now back with Sean Payton. The 44.5 still looks really, really good. And again, I don't see a whole lot of avenues for them to drastically outproduce that 44.5. And again, the line value in both of these has moved with us. Lastly, as far as over-under for week 1, Cowboys-Giants under 47. Like I just talked about, the Cowboys defense is getting really hyped up. And it's for a good cause. They're a great defense. They have great defensive pieces all over the board. Stephon Gilmore, Diggs, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. I mean, you just have an elite defense, which is great. And it should slow down the New York offense. However, the one spot that I would say is going to be a little bit of a tough spot for the Cowboys defense is the off-ball linebacker. If Micah Parsons is being used to rush the passer all the time, who's lining up with Darren Waller? I've mentioned this before. I mentioned this in the video where we took the Giants. I just see Darren Waller getting a lot of targets, getting peppered in this game, maybe even scoring in this game. Saquon Barkley should have a decent enough showing. He's going to get as much work as he can handle. If I'm the Cowboys, I'm playing a very consolidated upfront defense where just don't let anything behind me. You're probably going to bend but not break kind of thing. And I see a lot of field goals coming from that New York offense unless they can break one. And that's really what it's going to come down to. They're going to have to break something. On the other side of the ball, the Cowboys, from everything that Mike McCarthy's telling us, want to run the ball. They want to be a slow-paced, just grind it out kind of offense with low margin of error, with very tight games, and that's fine. He can do that. I expect it's going to lead to his firing, but good. I don't want him there anyways. So that's, I believe, how they're going to play. Even though they have CeeDee Lamb, even though they have Brandon Cooks, I think they will use those guys. But I think the problem is, and the reason I don't like Mike McCarthy as a coach, regardless of whether he's with the Cowboys or anybody else for that matter, is that when he uses them, he's going to use them in the worst possible spots. He's going to wait until it's 3rd and 9. He's going to wait until they need a big play. He's going to wait until they're down, until it's the 4th quarter, until it's like, okay, shit, we better go out and win now. And it's just like, why not just fucking do that the whole game, dude? But anyways, I do expect a slower offense on the Cowboy side, and that's not really going to be necessarily forced by the Giants' hand. It's just the way they want to play, the way that the coaching staff has decided is the best, route to victory. Even guys like Schottenheimer, right, the offensive coordinator. Again, Kellen Moore's not there anymore to make them go any faster than they want to go. On the Giants side of the ball, I think they may try to go faster. I think Brian Daboll is smart enough to try to get more points on the board, but the Cowboys' defense looks good enough to slow them down, to make them take longer methodical drives and kind of just take what the defense is giving them. So those are the unders. Those are all the plays for week 1. It is a total of 9 plays. So I've mentioned this before, but it's probably going to be one of, if not the only week I have more than 5 plays on the week, and that is exactly why you think. We've had all summer to think about this. We've had all summer to break down teams and defenses and depth charts and all that kind of stuff, preseason work and all that kind of crap. That's why there's a lot of plays for week 1. By all means, do not feel obligated to take any of them, but if you do, don't feel the need to play a full unit. I personally do, because I think this is my advantage time, is weeks 1 through 4, because I've been paying attention the whole summer, been watching all the preseason games. I got to see a lot of the depth pieces and all that kind of stuff. I feel like I know more right now than most of the general public, and that advantage I have is probably going to only last a handful of weeks until everybody gets fully, delved into football. So that's what I like. Now week 2, the couple of plays I like, side plays that is, and I'm not going to bet all of these necessarily, but these are just the ones that are on my radar right now, is the Broncos playing Washington in Denver. I'm really going to be watching Washington because Sam Howell could be really, really good. And Jahan Dotson may be an amazing, elite wide receiver talent that comes out of there, especially with Bieniemy kind of coordinating that offense. So I'm going to watch Washington before I put anything down on this. But if Washington doesn't look good, if Jahan Dotson does not look as elite as we're all thinking he's going to be, if Sam Howell just can't get the ball to him, if the offensive line is looking like crap, I'm either taking the Broncos to win that game or the under because I do fully expect the Washington defense to still come out and play and do what they're supposed to do, and be good at it. And same thing with the Broncos. Ravens-Bengals is the week 2 play that I really want to look at as well. And again, in most of these games, I'm looking at really one side for week 1. I'm going to go back and watch one game in particular. I'm going to end up watching all the games, but there's one thing in particular on the opponent side that I want to see. And in this Ravens-Bengals game, it's the Bengals' ability to stop the run, as well as how much are the Ravens still actually running the ball. The Bengals used to have problems with the Ravens' offense because the Ravens ran so much, and the Bengals play a too high defense, kind of giving up the run and letting them do what they want on the ground. If the Ravens' offensive mindset has changed and they're not doing that anymore, and the offensive coordinator doesn't go back and watch the success that they had, and he tries to pass on this Bengals team, he's kind of playing into their hand, especially if they don't get away from that too high defense. So I want to watch those games with those in particular things in mind. Vikings at the Eagles. This is going to be easy for me. Watch that Vikings game week 1. See what they do against the run. They're playing the Buccaneers week 1. The Buccaneers, if they're smart, should be running the ball early and often and all the time. And like I said, I'm not against running the ball per se. I am wanting to see these teams be efficient. And the most efficient way for the Buccaneers to win in week 1 is to take advantage of the Vikings' weakness on defense, and their weakness is the run game. That was the weakness last year. That's why we cashed in with the Cowboys against the Vikings, as well as with the loss to the Giants in the playoffs against the Vikings. We know what that defense looks like, and they really have not done much of anything to adjust it. If nothing else, they've actually lost players on the defensive line. So if the Vikings still cannot stop the run, and they still are not making adjustments, and you see that the Buccaneers, who are a team that themselves most likely going to be run heavy, is having success against that team, we're going to bet the Eagles heavy in week 2, because the Eagles are going to be a run heavy team, and we're going to watch it just to make sure for week 1 that that's still what they want to do. But if they're anything like last year, and I don't see why they wouldn't be, the Eagles are going to be running the ball a lot, and they're going to pick apart that Vikings defensive front. Next, we have the Packers and Falcons. I just said it a minute ago. Packers traditionally struggle to stop the run. They're playing the Falcons, who we all know, and they're telling us, and they've been saying they want to run the ball. They're a run-heavy team. If the Packers come out week 1 and cannot stop the run against the Bears, and the Bears' bottom third of the league offensive line, and they have to go play the Falcons in week 2, give me the Falcons. If the Packers can't stop the Bears' run, they're definitely not stopping the Falcons' run. And if they can't stop, big explosive plays, Bijan Robinson's going to be in for a big week 2. So that's what I want to watch from that Packers game. The Falcons game, obviously I'm going to watch it. I feel like I already know more or less what to expect from that. So we're going to see if there's any surprises. But if the Falcons do what we're thinking they're going to do, it's going to come down to if the Packers can stop the run or not. And if they cannot, and if they're struggling, we're betting the Falcons big week 2 as well. Raiders-Bills, we're taking the Bills in that game, most likely. I just want to watch the Raiders just to make sure that they're playing the way that we're thinking they're going to play, which is conservative, very close to the line of scrimmage, not a lot of deep shots, just kind of giving Garoppolo a lot of easy stuff. The Bills, same thing. You want to watch them just to make sure that they are doing what we expect them to do, which is more explosive plays, finding Stephon Diggs, letting Josh Allen get out of the pocket, kind of make plays, things like that. Overall, the Bills are just the better team here, so depend on the line. Watch the games, make sure nothing crazy is happening, make sure that these teams are doing what we're expecting them to do. And we're going to be looking at the Bills for that. Lastly is the Giants and the Cardinals. Giants, again, we're going to watch them week 1. We got money on them with the Cowboys game. But the Cardinals, are they as bad as we expect them to be? Is Dobbs going to be terrible? Is he throwing picks? Is everything really close to the line of scrimmage? Are they taking anything downfield? Because if they're not, and if this is going to be just hey, we're taking the 5-yard routes and we're taking slants and we're going to run with James Conner all day, give me the Giants. Because the Giants are going to pick apart that defense who's got all of Budda Baker back there. Even without great receivers, you're going to have Darren Waller have a big day. Arizona has traditionally really struggled against the tight end spot going back 4, 5, 6 years now, and you're going to play against a team with one of the best tight ends in the league with really a very central offense focused around him and Saquon, yeah, give me the Giants. They're going to play right into their hand. Just make sure that obviously the Cardinals, again, are what we think that they are, and that they are still struggling to stop the tight ends. Now, week 1, they're playing against Washington. Maybe they don't have a lot of tight end passes, but just kind of watch. You're going to watch on the fringes, see if they're struggling to cover the tight end, who's covering the tight end, if Logan Thomas is getting open, even if he's not getting targeted, is he getting open? And then lastly, how great are the Cardinals at stopping the run? Because if Washington, with Brian Robinson and Gibson, is having success on the ground and ripping off big chunk plays, and then you're going to come play the Giants with Saquon back there, and you have two guys that you're going to just kind of play off of each other, with Waller taking maybe short to intermediate passes and Saquon taking all the behind the line of scrimmage stuff, give me the Giants. Again, heavy week 2. So those are what we want to watch in the week 1 matchups to get ready for week 2, and some of the lines and the games that we're already looking forward to for week 2. So that's it, guys. It's been an hour of my time. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for the support. Thank you for watching these all throughout the summer, all throughout preseason. It's almost here. NFL is right around the corner. 6 more days. Let's fucking go. Let's get this money. Let me know if there's anything else you guys want, need, whatever, in the comments. And I hope to hear from you soon. And good luck out there.